started with the first conversation of the day. Now, the Finance Minister will on the 1st of February present the budget for the Government of India for the upcoming financial year. In it, she will talk about the income that she expects to receive from taxes and from other sources, and she will also talk about where she expects to spend money. Now, this is important from the perspective of investors, from the perspective of tax-paying citizens, to find out what the government is doing with the money that you're paying in taxes. And it's also an important exercise if you think about it, because it draws attention to the importance of the budget. If you think about it from your own perspective, this is a good time to plan your finances as well. Joining me to talk about this is Harsh Roongta, Certified Financial Planner and founder of Fee-Only Investment Advisers. Thank you so much, as always, Harsh, for joining in. I want to ask, though, when it comes to an individual or a household, what does it mean to have a budget? In this case, we're talking about not just 1 year, but we're talking about an ongoing process of setting a budget.
Absolutely. I think just like the government, of course, does it for much shorter periods, but they do it for a year, but they also look at the long term, right? As you mentioned, they will estimate their income, they will estimate how much money is to be spent on day to day and how much money to be spent for the future. That will create benefits for the future. That's called capital expenditure. Somewhat similar for an individual, much more important, in fact, is obviously your estimate of your income for not just the year, but how does the outlook look later on? More importantly, how much do you need for day to day? How much do you need to invest in capital expenditure or benefits that you will receive in the future? Basically, your goals. I think planning that is a absolutely key part to making sure that you are able to achieve your both your revenue expenditure, your day-to-day, as well as your future investment within the estimated income. Because unlike the government of India, you cannot print money. So you have to manage to do it within the estimate money that you are hoping to make.
Absolutely. So we're talking about the importance of having a budget, right, Harsh? But you were talking about certain aspects of the union government's budget for 2022, or rather the financial year 2023. And you spoke about a few elements, like, for example, the capital expenditure that is planned. And you said that this is important to identify how the future growth for the country will pan out. When you're talking about an individual, there could be parallels drawn here, right? So if you talk about the contingency fund of the government, then you're talking about how an individual should plan the emergency fund. If you're talking about a defense budget, you're talking about the possibility of having insurance. So what are the various things that one must bear in mind if they are sitting down to have this budget conversation at home?
I think just like the government of India, they will put aside money that goes into this natural calamities funds, right? Because you can't really predict as to when a big natural calamity will hit you. Somewhat similar, an individual is subject to so many risks. The risk of dying early, the risk of getting unexpected hospitalization bills, the risk of income stopping because of disability arising from critical illness or arising from accident, the risk of loss or damage of assets like household, your house, your household equipment, your car, etc. All these risks need to be covered, and these are part of the expenditure. And they need to be planned extremely well. And when we were talking, I had mentioned about how you can segregate this income and expenditure separately. Keep your income account separate. Keep your expenditure account separate. And from your income account, first spend/invest for the capital or for the future, your future goals, things like your retirement, things like your children's education, etc. Because those are the ones that will create benefits for you in the future. First, do that, and then transfer a fixed amount to the separate bank account for expenses. And from that separate bank account for expenses, spend for the day-to-day expense as well as all the insurance expenses that we spoke about. So that actually gives you a handle of what your expenditure is. And if you are falling short, if you are estimating your expenditure short, you will come to know it without having to keep extremely detailed accounts. And I think that is extremely, extremely important.
Harsh, you said that it is important to have a separate expenses account, that it is important to budget how much you spend, and when you have a separate expenses account and you transfer money to that account at the start of the month and only spend from that account, then you know exactly how much you're spending. But as just to have a devil's advocate argument here, if you are allocating money towards your long-term goals, towards your short-term goals, the investments that you need to make, then someone might say, what is the need for me to worry about my expenses? If I'm taking care of my investments, then I should be able to spend as much as I want. Is that a bad practice?
So, in fact, the whole purpose of first taking out what you need for the future and making sure it gets invested is to sort of give you a peace of mind. As long as you're confident that your future is taken care of, you enjoy what you spend. And for knowing, so your expenditure would be of two varieties, right? One is what is called the fixed expenditure, and that is what we are talking about, shifting to your expenditure account. Now, in the income account, what will be left over is the fixed expenditure which you have transferred, and you have transferred the investment, the balance is left over. Now, if that surplus is becoming bigger, what it tells you is that either you have pegged your future too low, or that you clearly have a room to, do discretionary and enjoyment spending, and you should do it. But and use that money for the discretionary or enjoyment spending. But remember, now you will enjoy it much more since you know you have taken care of your future.
Okay, that's a fair point. Let's get into some more details here, though. If you're talking about a couple of aspects, right? So if you're talking about the loans that you would have to take for certain things that you need that you don't have money for immediately. From the government's perspective, they generally have a fiscal deficit, and because they earn less than they need to spend, and they have the ability to borrow from the market and they can print money, but we can't really print money. What do you need to bear in mind in terms of the leverage that you can potentially take?
So I think on taking loans, there are two aspects. One is the, fact that for what you take loan. If you're taking a loan to, increase your income in the future, or to increase an asset base, like if you're taking a home, or, you are spending money on an education degree that will help you or your children increase the income base, I think that's a good loan to take, right? So that is one for what you are taking. But whereas if you're taking it for consumption, then all that you are doing is you're eating out of future income. You're just deferring your expenditure. So that's not a good thing to do. So for what you take is important. Even if it is a good thing, it needs to be adequate. For example, if your income is 1 lakh, then you can't really buy a flat for 6 crores and then expect to take a loan and pay it off from that income of 1 lakh per month. Not that you will get it. My point is, don't stretch it. And a good leverage, a leverage for a good purpose, the servicing of a loan taken for a good purpose should normally not exceed 1/3 of your income. That's a thumb rule. Okay, but it's a decentish thumb rule that take a loan for creating an asset or creating an income generating activity, and the servicing for such loan all put together should not exceed 1/3 of your net take home income.
Okay, there's another point, Harsh, that has to be borne in mind. Generally, the budget is actually an exercise that spans various teams. So the finance ministry actually liaises with various parts of the government and, in fact, with industry as well to get a sense of what it needs, right? Or the various ministries, what they need. So is that something that should be borne in mind if you're talking about a household budget as well? It needs to be a collaborative effort?
Oh, absolutely. The budget is not for an individual. The budget is for a family. And in many ways, as you become senior, the budget becomes for your extended family, for your extended society as well. So family, definitely, it always is a family budget. It can't be an individual's budget because whosoever that person is responsible for, their needs need to be incorporated in the budget. So if the spouse's need, the children's need, the parents' need, if they are dependent on the person, all those need to be incorporated in the budget. As you become senior, as your surpluses rise, you also need to accommodate your wider family, your society, also need to have to give back to society. Most people find that need to be important. We are finding it with clients that even at people at not very senior levels also reserve a portion to give back to society. I think these are the kind, because these are also necessary allocations that you do. They give a return in terms of larger benefit of the society that we live in, and that I think that is also extremely important to be done by individuals, especially as they become more senior, but not always necessarily. Even younger people are doing it and should be doing it.
A lot of younger people, speaking of younger people, Harsh, a lot of younger people have a very different approach, a very different attitude. They're not thinking very long term, and they think that it's a little pointless to do that. What would you say to these people? What would you say to the people who say, hey, you know what, I don't want to plan beyond the time that I'm 40. I want to focus on the here and now.
So I think to be able to not plan beyond 40, okay, you need to plan now. Okay, and I think this need to retire early, the need to take life as it comes, to need to experience, to invest in experiences rather than invest in things, as say an earlier generation would do. I think it is important that you plan for that in such a way that you become independent. Your planning makes you independent, so that at that time, when you have become independent, when you have started a second stream which will help take care of your basic needs, then you can do whatever you want. And even while you are doing what you want, you just set aside things so that you are able to take care of a larger time period. And I would say that the younger people, in fact, are much smarter today. I find them they are able to plan this. They come and say that, when we want to say that we want to retire at 40, what they really mean is that it's not that they are going to stop and start doing gardening at 40. What they want to say is that at some point of time, they want to be able to do what they want to be able to do without worrying how much money it is immediately making for them. And for them, to be able to do this whole budgeting exercise, in fact, is doubly important, not less important. It is doubly important because you do this well for the first 5-10 years of your career, then you can clearly look forward to doing that.
All right. Thanks so much. On that note, Harsh, for spelling it out, and in fact, a budget exercise is certainly something that everybody needs to take up, not just a few people. Thank you so much for joining in and for putting all of that into perspective.